guys watching Moana and something? And what? Man, man, I got to try to teach you guys scale models. Next door, you're watching Moana? Oh, that's tough. That's a tough act to follow there. All right. I can't compete with Moana. I can't. Really can't. All right. But I'm going to try. Probably the next most exciting thing behind You're Welcome would be a statue of Abraham Lincoln or the Statue of Liberty. I had enough Johnny Ball for another year. Yeah, and then as soon as we were watching the movie, as soon as I said, okay, pause it, let's start figuring out the calculations, and everyone's going to go, oh. Yeah, yeah. All right, so we got to get behind the technical components of these scale models, these scale drawings. Yesterday, if you remember, the two that I pulled out would have been the bobblehead doll, which clearly was not a proportional representation, and the race car, which was a representation. I just put a couple up here. Scale models, scale drawings, they're everywhere in the world, okay? You can see them all the time. Just pulled out a very popular, the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Have any of you ever been there? See this? Okay. You guys are all well aware that Abraham Lincoln was not that big, right? Abraham Lincoln was a very large man. I think he was like 6'5", 6'6". Wasn't that big, okay? So clearly this is an enlargement. This is a scaled-up version of him, okay? Statue of Liberty, not actually a real person, okay? It was a gift from France to the United States, but it still represents, based on a scale, the size of, I would assume, a normal woman. There wasn't someone walking around like that. Well, there are people that walk around dressed like that, but that's not modeled after a specific person. And the one on the right there is a model of a home, if you can see that. You have a house. Many times before these buildings are developed, they'll create 3D representations of what it's going to look like, as in some ways as a way to present it to people that may be funding this building. You know, like, okay, here's what it's gonna look like. Now can I have your money to build this building? All right. When they construct a building, they don't just show up to an empty, vacant site and say, okay, guys, let's just start building, see what we get. All right. They have exact, detailed plans. Everything is drawn and modeled to scale, so that they need to maintain this so that it looks the way it's intended to look. Okay? Yes, bro. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So scale, one of the scale drawings, we'll call it, we'll put it under that umbrella, is a picture. So take a picture, take a selfie, something like that, right? You want to zoom in on yourself to see how good you look, right? You're like zooming in, you're like, all right, yeah, I look good today, all right? It's still you. It's a picture of you, whether you like it or not. It is, okay? It's not distorted. It's not tweaked in any way. It's still you. It's just enlarged or reduced. But yeah, absolutely, that's a scale. I think I don't know if I used this example with you the other day, but you guys probably all messed around in like Microsoft Word or something like that, and you try to import a picture, and you're like, oh, I don't like the size of it. I want to enlarge it. Well, you pull on it and you distort it all up. You ever done that, where it's like, oh man, I took it out of the correct ratio that it needs to be in, and it looks, you know, it's like, oh, here's a picture of somebody, and you try to stretch it, you're like, oh wow, what happened to his head? All right, his head now looks like a football, and it's like that's not the way it's supposed to look like, right? So yeah, you took it out of proportion when you did that. You took it out of its ratio that it was intended to be. Okay, so these are examples of models that we're going to represent. Another thing that we represent, Brooke brought up the drawings. Absolutely. You guys are in art. You've probably drawn pictures of maybe buildings or bridges or whatever. Clearly, those are not life-size images of the real object. If I'm drawing a picture of a building on a smaller sheet of paper, it's a representation, hopefully to scale. Otherwise, it's not going to look great. I could try to draw a picture of a building, and as hard as I try, it will never look good because I'm terrible at drawing. So my drawing will never look to scale. There'll be something about it where you're like, well, that's messed up. clearly, because I can't draw that well. But if I had someone that could draw well, they're going to be able to create it so that it looks proportional or scale. Okay? Jai? Is different, absolutely. Have you guys done like perspective drawings where it's like, you're looking like maybe down a road and you're drawing the buildings up front. Oh, these are nice, big, tall buildings. And then you get to the end and it's like, oh, they're really small. Like Jack said, they're presenting different scales. As you move further away, the scales change as you go, which makes it extremely difficult. Anything for me drawing is difficult, but like, yeah, even the talented people have difficulties with that. All right, but like, think about a map. Now, I don't know how familiar you guys are with maps. Like map. Oh, what do you mean? You pull out your phone, you hit that little app that says map on it? Yeah, I know what a map is. Well, in the old days, when I was your age, we used to actually have the old paper fold-up maps. You ever seen these things? Yeah, they have atlases. Yeah, but you pull it out and you start unfolding it, and it's like this puzzle, and then pretty soon you got a map of Pennsylvania the size of your car, and you're like, wait, how do I read this thing? But we used to have to read these maps when you're driving down the road. It's like, okay, I'm driving down the interstate, where's my exit? And you're like scrambling and trying to find it on this little piece of paper, and it's difficult to see, and there's a lot of pressure associated with that. I remember riding in the cockpit with my dad as he's driving, and we're taking a vacation. He's like, all right, you're going to read the map, and I was like sweating immediately, because like that's a lot of pressure. If you miss a turn, you're in trouble, right? So you got to try to read through all these maps, all these roads are intersecting. It's crazy. It's difficult. Now, all you do is you pull up your phone, you type in the address, and some sweet little British lady's on there telling you when to make a turn and how, like, oh, in 200 feet, here's your exit. Please slow down. Your turn is coming. Oh, great. Awesome. You don't have to think about it anymore. As much as I liked reading the maps back in the day, I don't choose to do it that way anymore. I've adapted with the times. I use my phone, I use my car GPS or whatever, because I prefer that. It's easier, it's more efficient. That's the way the world is, okay? But regardless, on a map, whether it's the old school version or on your phone, on your car GPS, whatever, there is a scale that is associated with it. I don't know if you've ever seen, like if you ever zoom in, there'll be a scale that you could find that'll tell you just exactly how zoomed in you are. Like for every inch on the map, it represents 10 miles of real life or whatever, right? Scales differ depending on how zoomed in you are. But those are all based on scales, okay? This guy, yeah. Yeah, you used to have to like look at this and be like, well, how far away are we? And then you're like, oh man, you're like, I don't know. Like you're using like your finger, like, well, how big is that? All right, and then you're putting it down on the map and you're trying to estimate. I don't know. It looks like 25 miles to me. I'm not sure. Exactly. That's what a scale looks like, and especially that's what it used to look like. They call it the key or the scale that they would put on these. All right, let's get a couple definitions down here, then we're going to get some examples. So what is a scale map or a scale model? Scale drawing. It's a representation of an object that's too large or too small to be drawn at actual size. Clearly, we're not going to draw a map of Pennsylvania at actual size. This can be somewhat misleading with this definition, like it's too large or too small. Not necessarily. We could have created a statue of Abraham Lincoln to scale, life size. Okay, that wasn't, he's not too small to create that, but typically they do that with statues. They make them larger than normal. Although I was just in Disney World over the weekend. You guys ever been to Disney World? Well, in Disney World, in the Magic Kingdom, they have a statue of Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse, right in the middle, and kind of like the nerd in me was like, oh, I should go up there and get my picture with Walt Disney and the mouse, and we could do a scale drawing project of that and figure it out. And then my 4-year-old took off running, and I was like, I'll forget about that. So then I'm chasing him down, all right? So that was a great idea, and then it never materialized. We never went anywhere with it. But yeah, I mean, statues are everywhere. Scale models are everywhere. The race, things like that. Okay? The key on these scale models is that everything must be proportional, and we knew that. We just did that activity yesterday with Desmos to show that. A scale, this is important, a scale measures the length on the drawing or the model to the actual length, to the length of the actual object. And we're always going to keep it in that order. It's always drawing or model to actual. And the scale factor is when you get the units to be the same. And we're going to practice that here in a minute. It's the last of our definitions here. So Jack brought up the example about the map, and he said, well, you know, on the map, you would have that bar that would tell you like how far something is. And I just showed you an example of that. That's called the scale. So for instance, on this table here, I've got a couple of examples that'll help kind of highlight that. A scale would be saying something like 1 inch equals 3 feet, meaning like maybe 1 inch on a drawing equals 3 feet of the actual object. Maybe you're drawing a picture of yourself or something like that. And you say, okay, for every inch tall the drawing is, it's 3 feet of actual height. Okay, that's drawing to actual, always in that order. That's called a scale, because the units are different. But if we want to convert it to a scale factor, then we must get them into the same units, which is great, because we've already done this. We know how to convert units. This should be simple for us. 1 inch to 3 feet. Well, 3 feet would convert into inches a lot better than 1 inch would convert into feet. So 3 feet is how many inches? 36. Thank you. Very resounding there. Yeah. So what we would have here, 3 feet, 36 inches. So our scale factor, we would say, is 1 to 36. And since we follow this ratio, the drawing to the actual, that means that the actual object is 36 times the size of the model or the drawing. That's what that scale means. Okay, so like for instance, this race car here, we're going to look more into this later on. This is not a 1 to 36 scale, but what that would mean is for every inch on this race car, it's 36 inches on the real car, on the actual car. Okay, that's what a scale factor implies. Jack?
It's like picture cars that they're like 1/14 scale.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're going to be, I have some actually that we're going to use here. I don't know if I have them. I'm going to have to bring them in. But yeah, I'm going to show you different size cars, or different sizes of the exact same car, and you can kind of see how the scales change as you enlarge it or reduce the size of it. Yeah. Yeah, Jack.
I think scales are commonly used in modeling.
Absolutely, yeah. If you get a model, I think yesterday a lot of you said you've done models before. You look on the box, it's going to tell you what the scale is. 1/16th, 1/14th, 1/64th, whatever it is, it's going to tell you. A rule? Okay.
Like on the instructions, it was like there was like 5 pages dedicated. MG42 was like yada 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 scale, and it's like every single.
All this they talked about scales and everything. Yeah, I'd have loved it. Max? Mm-hmm.
There's like a little.
Yeah, don't go in and try to order the brownie the size of your car. You'd be surprised.
I
And disappointed at the same time, yeah.
$1 cinnamon roll.
Yeah.
And it says it like not actual size.
All right. So, speaking of that, you just reminded me. So when I was in college, we went to a basketball game, and we walked in, and one of my buddies had a raffle ticket for like, at halftime they'll do like these shooting contests or whatever. Okay, so they drew his number, so he gets to go out onto the floor, and if he makes a 3-point shot, he gets $1,000 for this. It was like, oh, crazy, that's awesome. Well, he did. He made it, and they presented him with this huge check, like this big. You ever seen these? Like this? Here's this big check. One of friends, companions, whatever, ask him how he's going to cash that extremely large check. It's fake. You can't. If you ever win one of these big checks, you can't cash them. They're going to give you a separate one that you actually can cash. All right? It's just for effect. It's for drama. You carry this big check around, like, oh, look, I won $1,000 on this. I can't walk through the drive-through of the bank and be like, can you cash this for me? Can you push this through the window and cash this for me? You can't do it. It's an enlarged version of a real check that they handed him in private. It's not as dramatic to be like, here you go, sir. Here's this little mini check. You have 10,000 people there. It looks better when you hand them a big check, right? So that's a scale. That's an example of a scale that you would use on that. So last one here. 1 centimeter, 5 meters. That's a scale, different units. Scale factor means we convert them into the same units. So what would 1 centimeter to 5 meters look like as a scale factor? Like, let's say 1 centimeter on a drawing is 5 meters of the actual object. This is going to be what to what? I would convert meters to centimeters in this case. Nadia? Yeah, it's a 1 to 500 scale, which means the actual object is 500 times the size of the drawing or the model, whatever it is. Okay? So you probably saw this a little while ago. Horse. So you have a drawing of a horse, and the height of the horse in the drawing is 5 inches. The height of the actual horse is 5 feet tall. Not a real big horse, but so if you look at the two of these, if I presented this and said, well, what's the scale of this drawing? You would say, well, it's a 5-inch to 5 feet scale, different units. You'd say, well, that means if I reduced it, for every inch on the drawing, it equals a foot of the real length or real size horse. Okay, well, that's the scale. The scale factor means that we would convert them. So what would our scale factor be? I write this down here. Scale factor is what? Ben? Yeah, and you could say a 1 to 12. And since they're the same unit, I don't even need the units anymore. So it's a 1 to 12, meaning this horse here is 12 times the size of the drawing. That's what you can comfortably say when you, I shouldn't say this one. This one is not 12 times. The real horse would be 12 times the size of that particular drawing. All right, let's turn that page over. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to skip this drawing here. We'll come back to that. We'll do that tomorrow, maybe. Let's jump into this example here. So you walk into this is a history museum. You guys have all done this. You walk into some place and they hand you a pamphlet, and on that pamphlet has a map, like a directory, kind of like showing you where to go and things like that. On the map, it's saying that the dinosaur exhibit room is 7¼ inches wide. Okay? Well, clearly the dinosaur exhibit room is not actually 7¼ inches wide. It's going to be bigger than that. The scale that they drew the map on is 1 inch to 8 feet, meaning for every inch on the drawing, it's equivalent to 8 feet of the actual building. I want you to figure out the width of the actual exhibit room. Just do it whatever way you like. You guys can figure this out. So there are a couple ways to do it. I just want to see how you did it. All right, so what did you come up with? How wide is the real room? Jack? 58 feet, I agree. How'd you come up with that answer, Jack?
I multiplied 7.25, as in the 7.25 inches on the map, times the 8, and I got 58. Since it equals 8 feet, then I got feet.
Yeah, you converted it into feet by multiplying it by 8. Now that would be kind of like a proportional way of thinking, okay? And what I mean by that is he's thinking, and he didn't write it this way, but this is the way we would think. Every inch is 8 feet. Okay, well, what if I had 7¼ inches? How many feet is that? Well, if you use the cross multiplication principle, you did exactly like Jack described right there, and he multiplied those. How many of you just did it that way, where you multiplied 8 by 7¼ Okay, did anybody multiply 7¼ by 96? You did, Aiden? Okay. Where do we get the 96, Aiden? The scale factor is 1 to 96. The building is 96 times the size of that drawing on the map. Okay? So he's going to take his 7¼ times 96 to get how many inches? And what number is that, Aiden? 696 inches. It didn't say to convert to feet. You could say it's that. If you wanted to convert it to feet, then what do you have to do, Aiden? Convert it back. I was fine with either one because it didn't really specify. But the other way to do this, method 2, would be to convert it into its scale factor here and then just enlarge it based on that. Okay? All right, let's turn that over. Let's try one more. All right, so another memorial here. World War II memorial, 17 feet tall, the pillars. The scale model has pillars that are 5 inches tall, so this one's different. Here's an example where the model is actually smaller than the actual. I think for everyone we've done so far, the model has been, or the one that we've had has actually been larger, because we did the Lincoln Memorial. They took Lincoln and enlarged him. Now we're taking the building and reducing it down, essentially. So what is the scale used? Remember, scale could be different units. Our ratio is always drawing, or model. I say drawing, it's to the actual. Ben? Yeah, so did you, it's like a 5 inches to 17 feet, and then you divided both by 5, right? To get 1 inch, and you said it was 3.4 feet? I like that. I prefer a scale that's always 1 to something, but it doesn't have to be. 5 to 17, this is already in, oops, missed it. This is already in simplest form. You could have said the scale is 5 inches to 17 feet, and I'd have been fine with that. Now, if it says 5 inches to 15 feet, I'd say reduce it. But I can't reduce this anymore. But Ben converted it into kind of like a unit rate and said 1 to 3.4. I'm good with that, too. All right? So then what's the scale factor? Once we've created our scale, we can then convert that into a scale factor, same units. Going to be 1 to something. Go ahead, Jack. What do you have? 1 to 40.8. Sound right? So in this case, the actual object The Memorial is 40.8 times the size of that model that was built. Okay? That's what scale and scale factor look like. Tomorrow we're going to look at an example that actually involves that race car right there. Okay? And we're going to look at how to draw this stuff on a grid. Tonight's homework, you have two different tiers there. I don't really care which one you go with. We still have some more notes to finish up. So if you're still not comfortable, maybe you want to look at the questions and make your decision based on that. I don't care which one you go with. I just want you to try some of these, see how you do on your own. Okay?